I think we can all agree that cosmetics were one of TF2's greatest and most popular additions. You're able to make your favorite classes look however you want, essentially making your loadout more personal, and you're also able to show other players your favorite looks and fashion style. Even to this day, cosmetics themselves remain as a staple source of content for every update the game receives, so obviously, they've become a quintessential part of this game's iconography. But in addition to cosmetics themselves, there's another type of item that sometimes goes unnoticed that can tailor your favorite look for a class better, and that would be paints. There's so many of them in the game, from subtle accenting colors to team-oriented color themes, and even these. Now the thing about paints in TF2 is that, at least for me, I tend to see a balance of all the different paint colors except for one, Zepheniah's Greed. Besides Radigan Conager Brown, Zepheniah's Greed is hands down my favorite paint in the game, and as the title of this video suggests, is what I would also confidently consider TF2's most underrated paint. So today, I want to go a little bit deeper into this paint color, and show why exactly Zepheniah's Greed is a better paint choice than you may think. Before actually explaining why I like this paint so much, I think it's important to back up my claim with a tiny bit of science. Keep in mind, everything I'm saying may not be 100% accurate because I'm doing most of my research at 2 in the morning, but for the most part, I think that I'm almost completely correct in what I'm about to explain. Anyway, a quick topic I want to cover briefly is color theory, which, to explain in the simplest of terms, is the deeper study of colors, how they work together, and how they can even affect our emotions and perceptions of various facets of life. But for the sake of this video, the first two parts of color theory are what I want to cover, because the intricate nature of TF2's paint colors and how well they blend with the looks of the colors of various cosmetics in-game is crucial to my main point of this video. So as we know, TF2 has two teams, red and blue, whose primary team colors consist of, would you guess it, red and blue. And if you look at a color wheel like this one here, color theory suggests that colors on opposite ends of each other are complementary, since, as the name suggests, they complement each other quite well. Because of this, one of the complementary colors for red is green. In the case of Zepheniah's Greed, it's a darker, militaristic, or even woodsy shade of green, so it nicely complements the flashy yet slightly subtle red textures of the red team mercenaries. As for blue, my monkey brain is thinking that because the shade of green of Zepheniah's Greed and the shade of blue seen on the blue team mercenaries are relatively close to one another on the color wheel, this means that it's likely they'd pair nicely together in comparison to something else like yellow or orange with blue, since it's further apart on the color wheel. Another really quick point I want to make is that, as I sorta just explained, Zepheniah's Greed is a washed out shade of green that's more reminiscent of other washed out colors in TF2, so by default, it would make sense that Zepheniah's Greed would tend to fit in with the game's overall look. Just by taking a glance at TF2's maps, textures, and even certain skins, the colors in this game tend to be washed out and dry, and if you take a look at Zepheniah's Greed, it is indeed washed out as well, simply meaning that it's one of the most fitting colors to use in TF2. I'm also not trying to say that using brighter, more flashy colors is a bad thing. In fact, if you want to use colors like Australian Gold and Pink as Hell, go right ahead. If you like it, I can't fault you for using it. But if you want to use a color that more resembles the other colors seen in TF2, then color theory would suggest that Zepheniah's Greed can more subtly give your favorite mercenary a better new coat of paint. Literally. Again, this video focuses on why Zepheniah's Greed is the most underrated paint in TF2 in my eyes, so I should probably explain why I think that is. First of all, like I said before, TF2's color palette mainly consists of desaturated, dry colors that we often associate with the 60s and 70s. Even many of the buildings, settings, and maps in-game reflect this color palette quite well. As for TF2's paints, I'd say that there are quite a few that are reminiscent of these color types, mainly Radigan Conager Brown, Muscle Man Brown, Ye Old Rustic Color, and Peculiarly Drab Tincture are the most fitting paint colors in TF2 since they blend in well with many various environments. Zepheniah's Greed, while a more subtle color like the prior 4 colors I just mentioned, has a harder time fitting in by comparison, since apart from a few maps, the shade of green isn't really seen anywhere else in game. This is also why there aren't that many green war paints that fit in well with the look of TF2. War paints like Alpine and Bomber Soul have a general color palette that fits in pretty well with the game, but beyond those two, most shades of green found in TF2's war paints stick out just a little too much in comparison to the colors more commonly found in game. This is a huge reason why I believe Zepheniah's Greed is so underrated. While it's a subtle shade of green, it being a shade of green to begin with makes it stand out more compared to other paints, which some players may not want for their loadout. Most paints work best because they subtly change the looks of cosmetics through different coloration. Zepheniah's Greed, while a great accent paint to use for your cosmetics, certainly stands out more than any other washed out paint similar to it. And just to simplify this even further, for some people, muted browns, tans, and off colors are just easier to look at than a more specific color than green. It may take some adjusting to truly enjoy the shade of green that Zepheniah's Greed has. But if you ask me, that's not a bad thing, because at least personally, I think Zepheniah's Greed is the perfect color to make your loadout really pop. In fact, I have this rule of thumb where if I'm wanting to paint a cosmetic and don't know what color I should choose, I always stick to Zepheniah's Greed. Okay, well I don't paint hair or beard cosmetics this color, since that would stand out in a worse way, but every other cosmetic is fair game. I mean, apart from facial hair cosmetics, there's really nothing that Zepheniah's Greed won't look good on. Other paint colors usually have a harder time looking good on both the red and blue teams. For example, colors like Mango Orange look great on red cosmetics, but stand out a bit too much on the blue team. And a color similar to Slate has the opposite issue, where on blue team it looks great, but on red it sticks out too much, and in some cases may even lead to mistaking a red merc for being on the blue team. Even a color more closely related to the desaturated and subtle nature of Zepheniah's Greed, such as an air of debonair, looks good on both red and blue, but is so subtle to the point that it's not immediately obvious that someone may be using this paint. Sure, it looks good, but you'll have to look so close at someone's loadout to notice that they're even using that paint sometimes. To me, Zepheniah's Greed has none of these issues that the other paints have. It's subtle enough of a color to fit in with most loadouts and the general look of TF2's art style, yet stands out just enough to make your loadout pop, allowing you to give your mercenaries a bit more flair that is well grounded in the game's general look. And to top it all off, at least at the time of making this video, it's a relatively cheap paint color, so if you end up liking it and want to use it, it won't cost you an arm and a leg. Simply put, Zepheniah's Greed is the best of all worlds, and that's why I'd call it TF2's most underrated paint, and my favorite paint in the game. Thank you guys for watching this video. This is a little different from the content I typically make. I mean, a video on paint seems like the type of content a desperate person might make, right? Well, maybe. I just wanted to give my 2 cents on a paint you don't often see in-game anymore, and since it's my favorite paint in TF2, I figured that's all the more reason to talk about it. But I'd love to hear what your favorite paint or paints in TF2 are, and maybe even which paints you'd consider underrated. Let me know in the comments and I'll check them out. Thank you all for watching, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next video.